Hello, you guys, and welcome back to Creatively Uncorked. Virtually, of course. We are not in person today. We are doing this through Facebook Live, so welcome all of you, whoever is joining. I do want to mention, though, our studio is open, so we are taking precautions. We ask people to wear masks, and we are sanitizing things, washing aprons, keeping people further apart than usual. But check out our calendar so that you can join us for one of our upcoming events. A few cool, quick things that I want to explain before we get started. We are doing our art kits to go. Many of you have probably used one of these already. It's been a great opportunity for us to be able to bring some of this painting joy into people's homes. For people that maybe aren't feeling as comfortable coming back to the studio, or maybe it's just you have a busier life and you want to fit art into your schedule in a different way than coming all the way to us. So this is a really cool opportunity. These are $29, and you get your paints and brushes, the canvas with the sketch on it, and the instructions, and most of them, I believe, now have a video to go along with it. So that's something we've been gradually working on adding in there. So this is the painting that we are doing today. It's called Winter's Glow. Let me rotate the camera here. There we go. Winter's Glow. You can see it up in the top left of your screen there. The materials, if you are painting with your materials from home, we'll want to find colors that are similar enough to work with this. Although I will explain a few ways that if you maybe, for instance, don't have teal, there's some ways that we can mix that from your core colors. So I'll be using a phthalo blue, turquoise. I'm using a chrome yellow, bright red, and then white and black. So get your painting palette set up if you're joining me today. And then as far as brushes, I know most of us probably have a big collection of brushes, whether you got one of our art kits and you have all of these at home, or maybe you're working with your own. But let's just find a few to kind of break up the different areas. So the core ones that we'll be using here today, I'm using a 1/2-inch flat brush. So that's just the biggest one from our brush kit if you did get one of those. And it's got that nice flat edge. And then we also have the curved one of the same size, so the 1/2-inch filbert brush with that curved top. And then I just picked one of the small rounds. And this will come in handy for details like the branches and the poles on these lampposts. So make sure that you have one with a nice fine point that you'll be able to get those details in there with. All right, and then if you are using your own canvas or something, I recommend doing a little bit of a pre-sketch, okay? We're going to treat these lines just as a rough draft, and we can always change them. We can go outside of the lines. The paint will cover them up, but it's good to have these as a rough sketch so that when we do our next ones, we can improve it, and we don't have to be so worried about getting it right the first time. So I'm going to just walk you through the main lines that we have going on here. So we have the road and then the curbside right there. So the road going along here and the curbside right there. So the first line is going over just about 1 inch from the bottom right there, and about, let's see, about 1/3 of the way up on our right side here, and then just connecting those. And then over here, if we start at the 1/3 mark and go to about 1 inch higher than where we were with that other one, and connect those, then we get these two lines that should be pinching together a little bit on that side. All right, next we have the lights right here. So we've got the 3 core lights, and they are creating a line that's pointing just towards where the top of that curb ends. All right, so what would be helpful is if you have a flat edge that you can lay down so that it points at that. Then you can put maybe a dot in place for each one of the lights. And the line goes just about up to the top corner here, maybe a little bit lower. We'll just add those circles on there. We want the one on the far left here to be the largest, and then getting smaller as they go. And then we can just sketch in these lines going underneath them. Again, they're going to get smaller as they go, so they're going to shrink. So you're going to go up a little ways. One thing I forgot to mention is that these art kit boxes, you can still order them for this video. We will keep the video on the website or on the Facebook page for about a week. So feel free to order that and join us and watch the video a little bit later, okay? So even if you can't paint with us today, if this looks cool to you, which I'm telling you, this painting looks really awesome to me. I'm really happy to be painting it with you guys today. So if it looks cool to you, but you don't have the time right now, order that kit and we'll get you all the materials, and then you can join us when you do have the time, all right? All right, so we've got our instructions here if you are using an art kit. We're going to start in with our filbert brush. So that's the rounded top one again. And these paints here, these are acrylic paints. They are water soluble. So that means that the water will be used as a tool to thin out the paints. So I'm taking some water, putting it on my painting palette there, and pulling some white into it. I'm just going to start by filling in these white circles. And as I was saying, we can use those pencil lines as kind of a rough draft. So that means that if we want to make these a little bit larger, we totally can now. So just check it, see if you want to make them a little bit bigger, if you need to change the size at all. All right, so we got those circles. Now I'm going to continue going out around these lights here with the yellow. So you're going to have this beautiful yellow glow. I'm going to keep referencing the image here. So they've got this glow all the way around them. And once again, it's going to shrink as they go further away. It's going to go close to the top there and leave about a ½ inch from the bottom. So I'm pulling in some white and a bit of yellow. Until we get a color that we like. And one that looks nice and bright to fit with this white. And now we can touch up the white later, okay? So it's okay to be a little bit free with these brush strokes and just go right around it. And I'm doing sort of a swoop with the brush strokes there. Gradually creating a circle. It should be a bit rough. Not a perfect circle. Now, if you need to make any adjustments to the color, like mine looks a little bit dim to me. I want to make it a little bit more yellow. We can make those changes now. It's good to be honest with yourself and reassess at each step of the way. Make sure you're giving it the very best color for each step. All right, and we're going to do this for each of the three. So they'll kind of look like these goofy truffula trees or something for a little bit. But bear with me, I promise we're going to have this really beautiful painting by the end. All right, so if the diameter was maybe like that, this one's going to be a little bit smaller, ever so slightly. And we can look down here kind of for reference too, to make sure that it's going to be just a little bit closer, actually. It'll be a little bit closer to the snow there. And this last one is going to be the smallest. A really great method that's so simple, but really, really helpful just to kind of gauge your painting as you're going is just to squint your eyes. When you do that, you might find that one of these is clearly not in the center of its light. You might find that they don't look curved enough. Maybe you have sort of a square forming. So do pay attention to those things and try to do your best to kind of work with them and fix those as we go. Now, one quick word about how to clean your brush properly to make these brushes last a long time, and also to save yourself the headache of getting too messy in your paint space throughout the process today. So what I like to do is when I'm done with the color, I go to the edge of my plate and get off any excess paint, go to my paper towel, dab it out a little bit, and then go to the water. This will keep you from running out of paints in here. It'll keep the water from getting dirty too fast. So thank me later. It's one way to be much more organized. So we want to avoid blending too much with this painting. That is something that makes this very, very beautiful, is that we see all of these colors in here, but they're not all mushed together. Because if we were to just go in and do, say, the yellow and this blue here and that red all at the same time, we would just get them all to mix together and turn into a brown. So it's important that we are being smart about this as we go and keeping colors out of the way of the other colors, okay? So we want to kind of clear them out, let things dry, and then layer them up, which is a really cool thing that we can do with acrylic paint. It can layer very well. So what we can do now is make a little bit of orange to go just on the outside of these. So the orange, we don't need to worry about this blending with the yellow so much because those two are right next to each other on the color wheel. So they'll look just fine together. So we want a nice yellow-orange. So you'll want to start with the yellow, actually. Start with some yellow and pull in just a little bit of red. A tiny bit is all you need because we want it to be really nice and bright. Think pumpkin orange. And then maybe even a little bit lighter. I'm putting a little bit of white into my orange, my yellow-orange as well, to keep it extra light. All right, so I know I was mentioning that zigzag brush stroke a little bit before. Now it is especially important because when we were just doing that yellow, you couldn't really see the brush stroke because they're all blending together anyways. It's all one color. But now with the orange, we want to make sure that we're being more specific about it, more intentional. So dip into that orange, and you might need to clean the side of your brush a little bit. So just pull it off on the side to get a nice sharp edge again. And then we can do this same sort of zigzag loop-de-loop with some of this orange right at the edge there. And really think about these circles as you're going. And follow that with the overall motion that your hand is moving through, while breaking it up into smaller brush strokes. And make sure that this color is not too much different, okay? If it's way too dark, way too orange, it'll probably stand out just a bit too much. There we go. So we got some orange at the edge of it. If we squint our eyes a bit now, we can see that the light seems to be kind of diffusing, getting a little bit less intense as it goes out. Squinting your eyes in this section might also help you locate any areas where it's just blended too smoothly. Like right here, I don't even quite notice the orange. So I'm going to take that orange a little bit darker. And add in a few brush strokes like that. All right, I hope that's going well for you guys. And by the way, you guys, you can leave messages in the comments there. I'm taking a quick break right now, just a quick check comments, see how these are going. All right. Now we can transition into our cooler colors a little bit. So going from yellow and orange to our blue and violet that's going to be at the end here. The green that you see in the painting is going to really help that transition, okay? It's kind of that middle tone that bridges the gap there between the warm and cool colors. So the way we're going to mix that is with this, the teal, and then we will be using some yellow and white. So if you still have some of that white and yellow mixture, we can reuse that. But otherwise, we'll take some yellow, pull it off to the side, add a bit of white to it. And then add a touch of this teal to it. A bit more than that. There we go. So we're going for this really nice vibrant green. And if you don't have a teal on hand, that's okay. A teal is just made from blue and yellow, so you can just use a little dot of your blue. Just don't go overboard with it. So we should have a color like this, a nice vibrant green. Again, get a nice fine edge on your brush here. And let's continue where we left off. Remembering that we don't want things to blend or we will be getting some weird colors in here. So if you need to take a moment to let that orange dry, go ahead and do so. But most likely this is already kind of drying on its own. So we're just picking up right where we left off, adding this teal right at the edge there, keeping our brush strokes nice and loose and free. And right here, it looks like I've gotten actually a bit too close to the snow. So what I'm going to do is actually just carry some of this teal in a little bit, kind of adapting it there. We'll touch it up with the orange later. And chances are your brush strokes don't look just like mine or just like the example over here either. Because we all have our own unique artist style. And that's a good thing, you guys. So if you are seeing that you are creating much more of a smooth shading in general with the yellow and orange, maybe try to challenge yourself to make it a little bit more free, a little bit more expressive. But at a certain point, you do want to embrace your artistic style and not try to force somebody else's, maybe mine or the artist who created the original here. So we don't want to force that style, although it is always helpful to give it a try. Stretch your wings a little bit. So let's do a little bit of problem solving here. I accidentally didn't bring the orange, or I brought the orange out too far, and so the green really had to cover it up there. So I'm going to actually quick touch up that area with some yellow and red, mix that orange again, get some white to lighten it up. And we can go right back in, pull the orange in a little bit further this time, keeping those brush strokes really loose. There we go. All right, and now we can move on to our blue and violet for the outside of it here. So this is where you see the sharpest transition in the painting. So if we look at the example there, we've got this warm area, and then we've got the colder area of the night. So that's a pretty solid transition. So we want that to all be happening right here in that same area where we have the orange, the green, the blue and the violet are going to sneak right into that, okay? So I'm cleaning that brush out real good. And we'll take a little bit of blue now. Phthalo blue. That means it has a little bit of green in it. It's a green tone blue, which I don't even hardly see, but I really appreciate this shade of blue. All right, so we'll take that blue now. Make sure you have a nice sharp edge on it. And we are just going to pick up where we left off there. Same exact thing, you guys. Nice free brush strokes. Keep that hand loose. I'm just sort of dancing over the surface. We cannot create art from a place of tension, a place of anger or frustration. So those things are going to show. If we are rushing it, all that is going to show. So really try to release that right now. Or ideally, even before you start painting. It can be helpful to do a little bit of yoga before trying to create a work of art. Or have a tea on hand, something warm and soothing. And notice how scribbly it is, okay? It looks kind of rough at first, but it's all coming together. It's all part of the plan. All right, so we just want sort of a diffusion of light. Everything that we see is just light in this world. And as we're painting, we are just painting with light as well. These are just different colors of pigments, different things that react with the light in different ways. But right here, what we want to show is a diffusion of light. So the light here is gradually, if you picture like, what's a good way to explain this? If you have like some rice and beans and you drop them together, you'll have to stir that for a while before they'll all be intermixed completely. So right here, if we have those two, it's like we're pulling some of it into the other, some of it into the other. So right here, we get this area where they kind of crisscross a little bit. So some of the blue, it's going to be much more compact here, more dense. And then it kind of sneaks in a little bit and it spreads out slowly, diffusing. The same thing with the green. The green is kind of diffused into the blue, whichever way you want to look at it. So we might even see some of the blue peeking through a little bit further in. but those should be smaller dots and they should be less frequent. All right. And as always, squint your eyes or just step back from your painting. Or another good trick that I've learned from some people here at the studio is just to take a picture on your cell phone camera if you have one, and that's basically the same as stepping back because you'll see it on a smaller screen then. All right, and with this blue, I'm going to carry it pretty close to the edge here. One thing to consider right now is also how these circles are looking. So make sure that the blue is coming in about equally on the top and on the bottom. One thing I talk about a lot in these art classes is just internal consistency. So whatever you have going on, make sure that you're doing that throughout the whole painting. Even if it's something that's very unconventional or different than what I'm doing, it'll look right if you are doing it consistently and if it's a conscious choice. A lot of things in art kind of happen on accident, but we still can consciously choose to either keep it or cover it up. In fact, I've heard that an artistic style is just a repeated mistake. I don't remember where I heard that, but I really like that idea. It's just a mistake that you actually chose to keep doing because you like the way it looks. Kind of a artistic evolution. Survival of the coolest looking thing. So actually, sorry, I was talking as I was painting. I carried the blue all the way over to the side. Hakuna Matata, all right? That's gonna do about the same thing as what I had meant to do. So, take some blue and some red and mix some beautiful royal violet here. This is one way to really make a night sky look even darker that I know, at least for me, I didn't think of ever doing when I was just getting into art. I always just did blue or sometimes a blue with black. But having a violet tone in it, really, you're seeing that blue is going towards the other end of the spectrum already, going back over to red, which is really cool. So same thing, crisscross brush strokes. Let's bring this violet in here. And because I brought the blue all the way over, we might need to make the violet a little bit more red so that it shows up even as it blends in here. And we'll mostly keep the violet to the outer edge, but like all the colors, it can also be diffused in. So right here, if it's really thick right there, as it comes in, it'll just get more spread out. You might even see a few right up close to that edge. Down here, we just want to make sure that our blue and violet reach that pencil line. All right, and one thing that is both a blessing and a curse in painting with acrylic is that you are easily forgiven, okay? So we can do plenty of layers. We can come back and touch this up. It's something that I sometimes rely on a little bit too much, but I do want to just throw that out there because it is always reassuring to know that we can touch up any of these areas if we feel like the colors aren't quite right. And we will do a bit of that. So looking at the example, I definitely can bring the colors in closer to that light. So I just learned a lesson there about not looking at the reference image again as we were working on it. I looked at it and then we dove in and I forgot to look at it again. So I'll show you guys how to kind of pull those in more if you would like to. That'll be nice and easy. But first, we are going to move along to other areas of the painting now. So we have this beautiful snow right here. And a dangerous thing in art is to assume. We don't want to assume that snow is white, okay? It is white, but being white, it reflects all of the colors around it. Everything is just light, okay? So it's going to reflect everything, all of the other lights bouncing off of it. So, in fact, we don't even see hardly any areas where it's pure white, just a few right in here. Mostly we see a light blue, we've got some violet down here, some teal, and that would be, I'm guessing, the blue in the sky reflecting off of the snow and being made a lot lighter, and it's mixing with that yellow. Okay, so that's how we can piece that together. We've got the yellow, we've got the blue in the sky, and they are turning into a teal there. And then we also have some yellow and some white highlights. So, breaking that down now on the canvas. We are going to start with a really light blue. So take some white, and you'll want to make sure that your brush is really nice and cleaned out for this. I didn't quite clean up my brush well enough, and so mine is already going to turn into a light blue. But you can add a little bit of blue into it. Just make sure it's the tiniest little dot you can get, okay? Start small with that. And we're just going to fill this in with that color first. So nice and easy. Filling in the entire snowbank here with this light blue. And snow is, unless it has just fallen, it normally has some sort of piles, and it'll show some cool shapes here. So let's try to give this a little bit of a wave. We can do a few piles, some spots where it goes higher and lower. One thing that we're trying to do with this painting is avoid having to take any long dry breaks. It can be helpful to step away from the work of art for a little bit, but it can also slow you down and really take you out of that mindset if you're really in the zone. So we like to just move around, keep moving. We'll come back to this spot later. So we're filling in that whole area with that light sky blue. Making sure we're using enough water that it goes on there nice and smooth. Whoops. Okay, so now we can do a bit of shading. So we've got that blue and violet. So again, take the smallest little dot of blue you can on that brush and get some of it off even, okay? We want to be really safe here. We're going to add this just along that bottom edge. So trace it all the way along the bottom edge. I'm still using that filbert brush, but I'm using the blade of the brush this time, so it can kind of trace along there. I'm just curving it as I go. And we'll come back and darken this line in a little bit, but for right now we want to actually spread out that shadow. We want it to feel like there's this pile of snow and then maybe it curves down. So pull this up a little ways now into that white or lighter blue. I'm just sort of doing some crisscross, maybe a few circles. It's okay to have some texture in here. All right, and then just gradually build that up. Make it a little bit more blue if you'd like. And pay attention to what's happening in your mind's eye. So maybe as you're making this, you see a really solid snowdrift coming into view. That's what I'm seeing right here. I've got a bit of a snowdrift edge, and I love the way that looks. It wasn't on purpose, but I'm going to keep it. Over here, we can make it a lot darker. We're going to have those trees go there. And we want the attention to be on these lights and how they illuminate the area around them. And to help sell that effect, we have to unilluminate or shade some of the areas further from the lights, so that it really feels like they're providing the light onto the snow here and the whole scene. So I'm going to darken this up a little bit more. There we go. And find the areas that you want it to be smooth and the areas that you want it to be a bit sharper. So right here, I want a smooth shading. Right here, I like that there's some more sharp edges. I really like that. So I cleaned out my brush, and now I'm going to take a little dot of that violet that we had mixed before for our sky, and we'll be using that down here now. So I'm going to go back over that edge again with this violet. Hopefully the paint is not drying too much, but if it is starting to dry, add just a little bit of water on your brush, and that should help wake up these colors so that you can still paint with them. All right, so use that little bit of water in your brush, and we'll spread this violet out a little bit into the blue. Keeping that shape of those snowdrifts that I like. And then if you need to make it a bit darker, you can. Just go back for more of that violet. And over here, we can add a lot more of it to really create that ground here, that groundwork for the trees. So the shadows for the trees, the absence of this light. And right here, I got a bit carried away, so I'm going to use a bit of water in my brush and help blend some of that violet into the surrounding white and light blue. There we go. So again, squint your eyes at your painting, make sure that it seems to match with the amount of light that you have and the reflections down here. When I squint at mine, it looks like these crazy flames coming out. It's really cool. Something that I can't quite see from close up. So there's certain aspects of your painting that you might only appreciate from a distance. All right, we are going to bring this snow a little bit further now. So we're going to do a little bit more with it. I'm going to take some of this teal, and we want to lighten this up a whole lot. And add a bit of water to it. Bit of water and white. So we should get this really nice light teal. And this is going to be added, like I said, this is the snow mixing with that light. So it's actually going to be used on the highlight side. So this is the shadowy areas are the darker blue and violet. The teal here can go in the highlighted areas where it's the lighter blue. And we're just going to add a few streaks of it. I'm keeping my streaks kind of lumpy and horizontal, okay? Because we want to show that the snow is laying flat, but that it's got a bit of motion into it. So you can add some of this teal in here. You can add some right above that line where the blue and violet are. So this can match or meet our shadows. Maybe they blend just a little bit. This is one color we don't want to overdo, but it just creates a bit of a texture to that snow. And that's always fun, to add a bit more life and texture into a painting. And what's cool is if you really like a color, you can always work it into your painting a bit more. So if you really like this teal, you could emphasize it a little bit more, and maybe you just want to bring the green in a little bit heavier up in the top as well to kind of balance it. And now the very last thing that we want to do with this area is bring those shadows even a step darker. So we have that dark violet, but now we can actually go into our black with a bit of water. And let's make this shadow even a little bit stronger. So just a little bit is all we need. We can trace this edge right now. We can have some areas where it gets a little bit thicker. Maybe the snow's piled up there a bit more. Or it's got like a bend in it. So now it really feels like it has some gravity to it, that it's wrapping around. And when we add those yellow highlights on the snow, it'll really come together. And that is what we are going to do right now. Make sure that that teal is at least mostly dry. If it's pretty close, you can probably go ahead and do this, but feel free to wait a moment as well if you're not quite there. I'm going to mix a really nice light yellow. So it's mostly white, just a little touch of yellow. And just add a few highlights into this area right here to make it really feel like it matches that light from the lamps. Need a bit more yellow in mine. There we go. If you have any areas that seem like clearly highlighted areas, like if you can see that texture in there, and there's areas that you think would catch more of the light of the lamps, you can go a little bit heavier with the yellow there. It's important that we're trying to really visualize the scene, the way that the snow rises and falls. And we also want to play around with the dynamics of the painting, okay? So like we want some areas where it is more thick yellow and some areas where it's more spread out. I see some people come in and they want to make it look balanced, and so they'll put little dots of yellow all over here. But these are these really bright balls of yellow light, and so we want to have the yellow light here be really bright and dense in some of these areas, really compact. Again, squint or step back from it to see how it's going. We can pull some of the yellow further out even. And I'm doing a bit more yellow than they did on the example up here, but I really like the way it's looking, and I actually have more yellow in my lights here, so it works. There's always a way that we can adjust the painting to work in the parts that we like, because actually I am really starting to like how bright these lights are. Even if it was a bit of a mistake. So add all of the yellow highlights that you need, and then we will call that good. Now let's take a quick breather before we go in with this section. And one thing that I want to show you guys is, well, just a few things that we have to offer here at Creatively Uncorked. So we are doing these Creative Box Live kits, which is a subscription that we do. It's a monthly subscription, and you get 4 paintings. We do a beginner level, 2 moderate level, and then 1 that's a bit more difficult. And we send you all of the materials that you'll need for it. So it's kind of like one of those art kits to go, but it's a whole package deal of 4 of them, and you get a live painting every Tuesday night. You get the instructions, all of the canvases, the paints and the brushes, all packaged up in a box for you. And this is on sale right now. We're doing $10 off of this. So go to our website if you're interested in that. And go to the section on the top menu bar where it says Shop, and you'll find that under the options of subscriptions. There's also an option just to get the live videos if you want to use your own materials at home and save a little bit of money. So those are some options for that. A few other cool things coming up with the holiday season. We have these beautiful, let me rotate this here. There we go. So these beautiful Christmas trees. I hear a lot of people, a lot of grandmothers that made these as kids, or people that have them that they inherited or something. So I guess this used to be a very popular thing in art classes, but they made them a lot bigger. But we have been doing these for the last couple of years, I believe, and they are a big hit. So they are back. Get your own Christmas tree, decorate it with lights. They plug in. It's beautiful. I've had a lot of fun making these and teaching the classes in the past. So I'm looking forward to doing more of that this season with you guys. And our most popular one lately that we have been selling is kind of a variation on that. We've got this Christmas tree truck where the lights go in it again. You've got the lamp inside of it. So you get to paint that with us. We'll be doing some classes coming up. And I believe these can also get picked up as an art kit to go. And with those art kits, we ship them right to you if you'd like, or you can pick them up at our studio in West Fargo. So check out all of that on our website if you are interested in getting your own art kit or signing up for one of those events with the beautiful Christmas light trees. And I would love to see more people signing up for the Creative Box Live. It has been a blast. We have done some really beautiful paintings, and we have a lot more through the end of the year and next season as well that we are planning, and they are very beautiful works of art. And one thing that's super cool about those is I think it's a chance to delve into really learning the craft a bit more. Sometimes when we do these paint-alongs, either as we're doing it right now or in our studio even, it's much more focused on just having a good time, which is great. But with Creative Box Live, we have a little bit more of a focus on growing your own artistic abilities, working from home and using your own space and materials a little bit can help that. Having easier paintings, medium and hard, so that you are always pushing yourself. Even on those easy ones, there is always something that you can work on and try to improve, a way you can try to push yourself. I'm always finding ways that I can grow as I'm teaching those. So that is an awesome opportunity that we are doing now. So sign up if that sounds interesting to you. All right, and back to our beautiful winter's glow. I'm going to switch to my flat brush here. And we're just going to fill in this road. So it's just going to be a combination of blue and violet, okay? Filling that whole thing in. going to start with just the blue and add the violet on top. Right when you get close up to those edges, you can just angle the brush out like this to get a really nice flat edge. So you can get right up to it. Although I find that it's best if you work pretty quickly there and are a little bit loose about it. If we're being too specific about our edges, it might draw more attention to them, which we don't want. We want them to be there, but we want them to be just a part of the painting, not something that people are focused on. Keeping my brush strokes horizontal here, going left to right, right to left. And I'm just filling the whole thing in with blue as a base coat. We'll build up the violet in just a moment. So, one important thing to consider with this is that we want everything to be consistent. As I was mentioning earlier, internal consistency is key. So depending on your balance of blue to violet up here, and even in the snow, we want it to be similar down here. So maybe you have some violet left over, otherwise we can mix a little bit more, just red and blue. And let's add some streaks in here. This whole section, as you can see on the example, is going to get filled in with these bright lights reflecting that. But having a base coat of blue and violet will help it to have a bit more depth to it and connect a little bit better to the rest of the painting. All right, if you get too carried away by any chance with the violet, you can always come back in with blue. So I tend to do a bit of a back and forth with those, where I'll do a bit of one, clean out my brush, go to the other. We do want to find a good balance where we're not blending everything into one mush of a kind of middle violet. We want that nice blue and that nice violet. So I have a few spots where I can still see those. It got a bit muddled in here, but I'm going to go with it. Okay, so while that is drying, we can go ahead and add our trees in here, and then we'll do a few touch-ups to this area if you have any that you need to do. So for those trees, I'm going to recommend having the filbert brush on hand, and we'll use the small round for part of it too, okay? So if I forget to mention it, just pay attention to what brush I'm using and switch when you need to. So remember earlier how I was saying we don't want to be mixing these three at the same time or we'll be getting brown. Now we actually want to get a brown, but a really dark brown. So we can start by pulling some blue and red together, make that violet. And then add some yellow to it. And then you just want to make sure that the brown feels like it fits well with the painting, okay? We will darken it up with some black in a moment, but we want to make sure that the color is right. So if it feels too red or orange, add a bit more blue. Because we don't have much red in our painting, we'll add a bit into here. But if the trees feel too red, they might feel out of place. So having a bit more of a blue-brown as opposed to a red or yellow-brown will help it to really blend in with that sky and the overall feel of the painting. I think brown is one of those colors we don't always think about as having these colors in it in these different shades. But it really does. And there's a lot of beauty that can be found in exploring those different tones of brown. So, once you have a brown that you are happy with, let's darken it up. So we want that bit of color in it to show, but we don't want it to be overpowering. We want these trees to mostly feel like a silhouette. So add a bit of black into that, and a bit of water. And then you'll just want to get a nice fine point on your brush again. And now we can create these beautiful trees. So I'm going to start by just creating a few kind of core lines. Whoops, my apologies, you guys. We should definitely be doing the touch-ups in our light here before we do the trees, okay? Sorry about that. We've got the color mixed. Let's just leave it there, and we'll clean out our brush. We'll come back to that in just a moment. All right, so if there are any touch-ups in this area that we want to make, now is the time to do that before we add those trees. So one thing that I would encourage you all to add is a bit of red. Maybe you left your colors really far out like I did, and you have just a lot of yellow in there. There's some things that we can do with that too. So I'm going to take a bit of red and go back to that crisscross brush stroke and add this in here in a few spots. Since the red is going to be much more subtle and less of it, I want to make sure that I'm jumping around, doing a brush stroke or two here and there. So we don't get too carried away in one spot and then we have to balance it out everywhere else. So there we go. I've got some red in there. Any of the other colors we can play around with too. We could do a bit more teal. And I'm going to try a little bit with just this plain teal. Making sure we're jumping around, that we're keeping that nice circle around the lights. Even if we're bringing it in a little bit further, we still want to keep that shape. And the teal and the red can go a little bit into the violet and the blue sky as well. This is one way to make it extra colorful, have the colors kind of overlap each other. All right, and then one thing I definitely want to do in here is add a bit more light into this yellow. So I'm going to make a few other shades of yellow to go in there. I'm going to do a bit with an even lighter yellow. So find a clean spot on your plate and mix mostly white with a little touch of yellow. So it should be lighter than what you have. And we can add some of this into here, crisscrossing again. That can even overlap a little bit into the white light. There should be a lot of motion and energy in this painting. Coming with the movement of these brush strokes, you see that those kind of swirls and dashes. Can also bring some of this white yellow out a little ways. All right, and then we can also add in a bit of this solid yellow too. And this we would want to be mostly kind of on the outskirts of that. So again, just sort of crisscrossing. There we go. Hopefully that is really bringing it together now. And then if there's any other colors that you want to add in there, we totally can. And you can bring your colors in further if you'd like. If you want to add any more of that orange, you can as well. But I'm going to call it good and switch back to that dark brown that we had mixed. Okay, and with these trees now, we want to start with the core lines, okay? We don't want to get too detailed right away. So, let's study these real quick. So, this one goes off the top, this one almost does, and this one goes just to the top of this light area. So let's do those main lines. And also notice where they end down here. All right, so they're behind the lights here, and they're not quite in a straight line. We don't want to bring them too far down, is why we're pointing that out now. So this one is just about a straight line all the way up to the top. And then a cool little detail on this, and you can either do this right now or with the small brush in a moment, but we want it to look like there's snow piled up at the base of that tree trunk. So I can create a little bit of a curve where it goes like a wave. We've just got a bit of a wave there. And then thicken up the whole tree trunk to match that. It's okay if it wobbles a bit. Trees wobble sometimes. All right, and then we have these two over here. This one's going to be smaller and only come up to about here. And again, we want that sort of wavy base. I'm making this one a little bit wobbly on purpose, just for some fun. And I give it a double tip there. All right, and then we have this tree right here. I'm going to give it a slightly different base there. It's kind of the snow's piled up from the right side on that one. I'm going to have this line go almost to the top and stop right over there. Now we can switch to that tiny brush for the details in the branches. We'll want this light brown, or that dark brown, really watered down. That is just to help us to draw a little bit more it's a bit like inkier, and so we can draw a little bit more smoothly with it. So we can get these lines that are much smoother. It's important though that we are not pushing down too hard with our brush, or we're going to get thick lines every time. And then if you are having trouble getting a nice tip on that brush, make sure that you are spiraling it. That's one good trick. You can spiral it or just pull it off on the side. And then let's add some branches. So again, let's do a study real quick of the example. One thing that I noticed on this one that we try to do on a lot of our paintings here at the studio is not having the branches get overly complicated, and also not having any of them turn to face downward. Trees are always trying to get their branches to go towards the light. Of course, they're all trying to share space at the top, so they have to spread out a bit. But we don't see a ton of trees where they're actually growing down, and that sort of a design would, I think, draw a bit too much attention to itself. So on this painting, we want these all to be moving upwards to the light. So what I like to do is with that tiny brush, I just sort of trace the tree, and then as you go, find a spot where all of a sudden it's going to turn off to the side, and then just let it go and thin out. This is part of letting the painting create itself, is you do that, and then you'll find these spots, like right here, where it would make sense for another branch to split off. And maybe right here your line turned a little bit sharp and you could add another little branch there. But before we get too carried away with that branch, let's add some other ones in here. So we've got another one up there. Add as many or as few as you think make sense for this tree. And then just make sure that they are thicker at the base or at the part where they connect to the tree, and then thinner as they go out. All right, and we can get these branches really thin and wispy as they go out. We can just pick up the brush as we go and let it trail right off. There we go. I think we can really appreciate that light now with that branch behind it. Awesome. Same thing now with the other trees. And in this one, we're actually going to see the whole tree, so we are going to have more branches that are visible. So let's create a few core ones. Can have this one get nice and thin. I'm going to have this one veer off to the side. And if the branches are getting too wild up here and too top heavy, we can always thicken up the trunk a little bit more. Just keep moving with it. And ideally, actually, we shouldn't be working one side a ton before going to the other. It's very helpful, actually, to work on it all together. So get the core branches and then add in a few other more details and then keep building it up from that. So we keep going back and forth all the way around the whole painting. There we go. So that one, we see a much more detailed full tree. And then we can always make some changes to it. So right here, it feels a bit square on that top. So I'm going to take one of these branches and just make it come up a little bit higher. And voila, I think that'll do it. So it feels a bit more rounded there. So we can thicken up this tree a bit more maybe. And because we have that snow piled up on it, we can add some lines that don't always make sense right away. Like right here, I pulled a line down for the far side of that tree, and then I just stopped it like that, which would normally look kind of weird. But right here, it looks like the snow is just packed up right against it. So it actually fits, I think, with the setting. So we have to think about all those elements and how we're going to portray them. Now we can have a few branches overlap, but let's try not to do too much of that. The reason is just that it gets too complicated and it'll detract from this tree a bit. So I just have that one branch that overlaps a little bit. Mostly I just want to have some that are reaching further up. And I decided just to carry that tree over the side, that branch. All right, those are looking awesome. Okay, so we have some really bright reflections now to do beneath these street lights on the street here. So the first color we're going to start with is that light yellow. We've mixed this quite a few times now. It's just yellow and white. And make sure it matches more or less with your sky there, or with the light of those lamps. And using that small round brush, I'm just going to pull horizontal brush strokes. So that is something really to notice here, is that we have this really shiny road. And so to make it look like that, and that it is laying flat, and maybe it's got water or something on it, we want to pull all of these lines horizontally. So hover over that a little bit, just to get the motion down, and then let's go for it. And I just want to point out where the light kind of fades out. So right here we had that yellow to blue violet, right around these circles. Here we want it to be roughly right here, right directly beneath that yellow. But we don't want a perfectly straight line. So if you look at that example, it fades out. So that's kind of the spot, or maybe in a little ways, the spot where the colors sort of fade. Okay, so let's add some yellow brush strokes in here. And having a bit of water in it will help it to look a little bit smoother. Like right here, I got a bit of a rough texture. We want to avoid that typically. We'll just add about that much yellow in there. We've got a lot of other colors to add too. All right. Now we also can add in some teal. I'm going to do a few brush strokes with just the teal as it is, and then we can lighten it up as well. So water, add a little bit of water into it, and we'll just add some horizontal brush strokes of teal. We want to get right up to the edge here in a few spots. All right, then we can add a bit of white to some of that teal. Mix a combination between the two. And just add a few brush strokes that way too, just for variation. So right here, we're letting some of the brush strokes go further into the violet, and we're leaving a little bit of that violet there too. If we get too carried away, we can always come back with that blue and violet and touch that up. All right, it's looking much brighter in there now. If the paint is really wet, you'll probably want to let it dry now for a moment. But if you're ready to keep going, we can do some yellow and orange, or sorry, yellow and red to make an orange. And again, we want this to match the orange that we have earlier. So we want it to be a yellow orange, not too much red. And a little dot of white in there too. There we go. And we'll just add some streaks of this. Oh, that looks really good. So notice how they're showing up in different areas. So right here, I've got a streak of it out there. And then a few right over here. We want it to be kind of uneven. going to take a little bit of that yellow-orange as well without so much of the white in it, just for a few streaks that are even more vibrant. So I think that's my favorite color so far that we've used down there. All right, home stretch, you guys. I hope these are looking good for you guys. They're looking awesome. This is going really well for me. So I hope it's turning out well. Okay, so now we can add some white highlights into a few areas. So I'm getting the brush really cleaned out there, and just going in with some plain white paint with that tiny brush. Now if you need to make any touch-ups to your lamplight, now is a good time to do that. Maybe you can see the pencil line a little bit, or maybe you're just realizing that they're not quite round or they're not quite the right size, or even maybe not quite the right placement. So make those changes right now. Get those nice white circles. And then we want to add a little bit of white into the reflections down here on the road, and maybe a little bit in the snow. So I'll start in the snow there because this is still drying for me. So pick a few spots, specifically maybe in the areas where you have all those yellow highlights, just to add a few that are even brighter, so bright that they're going to look white. And maybe the snow is piled up and it's got these little spots where you can see those piles forming. The back right here, we could bring that out a little bit more. Maybe right here we've got that snowdrift and we want to really make it look sharp. So right here I can make a nice white highlight there to show the top of it. So really go over this area and try to find a few spots where you can really make that texture come out. Like right here I've got the snow piled up against the tree. What if I add a bit of white there to show a highlight on that edge? To show that it's piled up. Right there I did the same thing. So that'll kind of make the shadow side look even more shadowy if we add a highlight on that side. All right, and squint at it every now and then or step back. We want to make sure we're not overdoing it. Because those yellow highlights were pretty awesome. But now hopefully it'll feel a little bit brighter in there. Okay, so now we can add the white highlights down here too. And these are going to be specifically right beneath each lamp. So that's where we want it to be thickest. If we look at the example there, we see that all the lines are going just around that pretty much. Horizontal brush strokes straight beneath that. But we can vary the distance that they go. Maybe they're not quite centered every time. And they don't have to have perfect space in between them either. So the more free you can be with that, the better. Just loosely adding on these white brush strokes. And we can always come back with other colors right here. I got a bit too carried away with the white, so I'm taking a bit of orange in here. And a bit of yellow. And just helping bring that back to those warm colors so that it really matches the top here. So we definitely don't have too much white in the top. It's just those little, just the circles. All right. So last detail, and that is going to be these lamp posts. Now, we want to make sure that these are straight lines. So if you let the paint dry and then go back over with pencil or chalk, that's a good way to kind of try it out first before committing to paint. But if you are feeling daring like me, let's go for it. One useful trick is to rotate your canvas and have a finger tracing the side. So your pinky right up against the side, and you can draw a much straighter line that is going to be parallel with that. And just a reminder that we don't want these coming down all the way. So I'm actually going to do it this way. So look at this line to make sure that you are going parallel to it. Straight up and down. And err on the side of not bringing it down far enough. We can always bring it further if we need to. But right now we're really worried about this portion of it, the top through the yellow light there. And make sure it's centered on that light. It's our last chance to make an adjustment to that line if it wasn't quite right. Whoops. Okay. Now, studying this, let's look at where the bases of these are. They're all going to be about the same distance from the path there. It's about a 1/4 inch maybe. So I'm just going to bring it down a little bit closer. And it looks like that's about where I want the base for all of them. So that's a really good way to do it, is just going by eye. So if you look at it, does it look like they're based at the same spot? Does it look accurate to what you know about lampposts in real life? And then we'll just want to thicken up this line a little bit. And the furthest back one can be the thinnest. This one will be the thickest. And that'll just be a very slight difference, okay? We don't want to overemphasize this one. But I'd say this one's about 2 brushstrokes thick, depending on how thick your brushstrokes are, I guess. And this one's about 1.5. So it's a very subtle difference. But it is there all the same. All right. And then they all have this little box on the bottom of them. So just create a little rectangle, basically. But before you create that, remember that we want to have that curvy bottom. We want it to look like there's snow piled up around it. So start with the bottom edge. Make it a bit uneven. And create a little box, little rectangular box on each one. Again, keeping in mind that they are going to get smaller as they go. So this is the smallest one. And it's a little bit forgiving with how much of it you see, because the snow is covering these in the picture. All right, so we have the squares under each one, and then we can just connect it with a little triangle, basically, where the square curves up, or angles up, I should say. And then we don't even need to wait for it to dry. I'm just going to take a little dot of white with my tiny brush. I cleaned out my brush. I'm just going to smudge this right onto that spot we just added, that little triangle area, just to create a bit of a highlight, to show that it's got a curve there. And just to add a little bit of detail in there. If your paints were drying too much, you can just mix a light gray. Sometimes these paints dry really fast. And voila, that is it for our Winter's Glow painting. So, thank you guys for painting along if you were joining me today. If not, if you're just watching this for fun and you want to, or maybe you're just tuning in now and you want to paint along with this, I just want to let you know that you can still get those as an art kit to go. This video will be up for about a week on the page where you see it now. So you can order an art kit to go made for this painting or any of our other paintings that we have on the site. We have, I believe, over 100 options at this point, ready to go with art kits. So if you do that, you can get this in the mail delivered to you, and it just comes in a box. It has the canvas and the paints and brushes and the instructions that you need inside. So there's the pack of brushes. You can see the tubes of paint that we get. And these can either get shipped right to you, or you can come to our studio in West Fargo and pick them up. So that is the options for how you can create this with our art kits to go. Or you can always just come into our studio on a Friday night. That is one of my favorite events that we offer, is our You Pick. So come in on a Friday, grab a painting off our walls. So you can come here with friends and everybody grabs a different painting. You do not get a live demonstration as you just saw this video right here, but instead you would have this painting sitting right next to you in an empty canvas, and I would be walking around, or one of the other artists here at Creatively Uncorked, and we would be giving you one step at a time, just one bite of painting at a time to kind of guide you through it, okay? So it makes the process a lot easier, and it's really fun because you can all do something different. So thank you guys for tuning in and painting with me. I hope you all have an excellent rest of your night and that you all keep creating art, okay? It's one of the most awesome things that we can do. It's very relaxing, very fun, and it brings so much positivity and joy to the world around us. So, you are all artists. Keep creating art. Good night, you guys.